Welcome to the latest episode of 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for finding us on your favorite podcast app, whether that's Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, or any of the others. You can also find us on Dash Radio. Download the Dash Radio app for free. Search for Nothing But Net. We're there every single day at 7 p.m. Also, every day I'm on OnSideRadio.com. That's also on all the podcast apps. That's at 10 a.m. to noon every single day with 5 Reasons contributors. I feel like we've kind of taken over that station. We've got now 6 people from 5 Reasons hosting shows over there. So make sure you check out OnSideRadio.com. Also check out 5reasonssports.com. That's where you can find all the latest articles from Brady Hawk and others. Brady posted an article kind of breaking down Jimmy Butler's return, so make sure that you check that out. Also, the great sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. I'm on a little bit of a losing streak right now, so I'm hoping to correct that. Go to prizepicks.com, see if you can do better than I'm doing. Use the code 5, F-I-V-E. This is the new way to play daily fantasy. Doing the NBA stuff right now. Obviously, you can get into college basketball there too. You can pair college basketball players with NBA players. You can also pair NFL players, as we have the Super Bowl coming up on Sunday, and I'm going to be up in Tampa for the week coming up this week, so maybe I'll have some suggestions for you. So go to prizepicks.com, use the code 5. They've got single stat categories now. So in addition to playing the fantasy points, you can also just say, hey, you think LeBron's going to go over their projection of 25.5 points or say 7.5 rebounds? You go over. You think he's going to go under? You go under. I just missed out with John Wall by 1 rebound or 1 assist the other night. So it's a lot of fun. It makes you follow all the games you wouldn't necessarily otherwise follow. So check out prizepicks.com. Use the code 5. And now, tonight's episode.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5
on the floor.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily show on the Miami Heat and the NBA featuring Ethan Skolnick with Alex Toledo and Greg Sylvander, part of the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
All right, Ethan Skolnick back on 5 on the Floor. Here is today's floor plan. I've got Greg Sylvander. You can follow him at Greg Sylvander on Twitter. And I've got Royal Shepherd making his second appearance here on the pod. He appeared with me a little bit earlier. Who were you on with, Royal? I can't remember. Who were you interviewing?
We were interviewing Coach Tony Ferentino.
Ah, that's right. Coach Tony. It was you and me. You can follow him at, not Coach Tony, but you can follow Royal at Royal A. Shepherd on Twitter. Royal is one of the hosts of our post-game show. I actually filled in for him off Saturday night's win against the Kings, a 1-point win. Jimmy Butler returns, has 30 points, nearly a triple-double. They still needed a BAM block at the end. All right, so what we're going to do tonight is we're going to try to figure out not can the Heat get back on track, but can the Heat do 2 things? Can they find an identity? Erik Spoelstra always talks about identity. 3 of us talked before the pod tonight. We agree they have no identity right now. And the other thing is, can they become dangerous again? And how exactly does that happen? So we're going to break some of that down tonight while we also give you some news. Tyler Herro, the Heat basically said they don't know how long they're going to be without Tyler Herro. He was close to someone who tested positive for COVID. Of course, Herro just missed a bunch of time, not for COVID, but he missed a bunch of time because of an injury, came back, played 40 minutes in the game, but then found out at halftime that someone he knows who he's close to, again, tested positive right before the game. And now, again, we don't know how long Tyler is going to be out, if he's going to be out at all. He's currently listed as questionable. I'll start here. I'm going to go to you first on this, Greg, and then we'll get into the topic of the day. This doesn't make a hell of a lot of sense to me. It's like they're policing like who you're around who tests positive, but then Tyler played 40 minutes yesterday. I can't say that I totally understand how COVID works at this stage. I keep having to have tests that come up negative because I'm around people or someone else. My daughter's teacher tested positive, and then I got to test again, even though I don't understand how any of it works. But from your understanding of this, like, what is this about? Because if Tyler was in danger, so to speak, by being around a person who tested positive, wouldn't the other players that he was around last night against the Kings be in danger too?
I mean, in theory, yeah, anybody he comes in contact with, right? And it was also interesting, something that I think was talked about a lot less was Kendrick Nunn, and the fact that the reason why he didn't get any playing time and essentially stayed back from the bench was because he had his test results. And correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that they arrived late. So then he they didn't have the results, so he couldn't get on the court. It's interesting to see how the discernment that they're using with what's a risk and what's not, because you're right. Like to your point, he was out on the court with all the other guys. I guess they're immediately all being tested again. So then the results of those tests will reflect whether that threat was real or not. But you're right. Like there's a huge unknown component to it. And I just don't know how they mitigate the risk. And that's what this has been about since day one. It's why I always thought the bubbles were a better way to go, because wouldn't it suck now if Tyler Hero has to sit out for an extended period?
Well, not only if he has to sit out for an extended period, but what if others on the team now do too? Like, I mean, they may be stuck back in the same. I don't think it's going to happen, but I don't really know. They could end up Royal in the same position they were in after that Wizards game that I think everybody agreed they shouldn't have played at the time. The NBA kind of agreed with it after the fact, but not before. As we know now, Jimmy Butler and Avery Bradley tested positive, and then other players on the team had to went through the contact tracing and missed a week, and those two guys missed 2 weeks. I mean, can you make sense of this at all?
Not at all. The only thing that I can think of is that a dog sat down next to Tyler, and now all of a sudden he can't play for another week. So you just getting these guys back, and now all of a sudden you're reliving the same nightmare all over again. And it only makes the season outlook look more bleak from that perspective, whereas like now there's this state of confusion where we don't know who has been affected by this and what this team is going to look like in the next couple of weeks because of it. So it's disheartening to hear that it's attacking our team as soon as we have some semblance of a full team. But that's just the state of this season. It's been confusing for everyone, and it's just been a general poor decision to have the season go on like this, and it's tough to figure out how we're going to move forward from it.
You can sense Erik Spoelstra's frustration in these Zoom calls. Like, they're not the type to kind of call out the league, and they don't want to make excuses because then it trickles down to the rest of the players. But you can tell he wants to say something. Like, some of the comments lately have been very thinly veiled. And I get it, because when I talk to people inside the organization, they're frustrated. They also think that maybe they made some poor decisions because they were trying to do the right thing. We've talked about that before. The irony of this, I don't know if that's the right word, but if they had held Tyler Hero out, we've talked about this before, like if they'd held Tyler Hero out before, they might have gotten out of some of those games that they lost because they were down at the threshold of close to 8 players. And now ultimately they finally get just about everybody back. I heard Bradley was going to be back for the next game. That's not COVID related. That was injury related. I heard Harkless is close. I mean, they're close on a bunch of different guys. I don't really know about Leonard and Silva, but a lot of the core rotation players. And then again, you had Nunn's tests not come back in time. So you're watching that game, and it's like, why is Gabe Vincent, why is Max Strus playing crunch time minutes? In part, I mean, they had this situation with Nunn. I don't know that he would have played the crunch time minutes, but it's just like they don't have the full complement ever. So it does complicate this situation, because we're going to talk about this pod in the context of them having everybody. And so I'll just start here. And Royal, I'll start with you and then go to Greg. What is the identity of the 2020-2021 Miami Heat? Not last year's Miami Heat, not Big Three Miami Heat, not and this particular team, because Spoelstra talks about identity. What is their identity?
Their identity is a team that gives up a lot of three-pointers, wide open three-point looks, a team with poor perimeter defense, and a team that pretty much can be beat on any given night. They don't have the defensive intensity that you're accustomed to. Jimmy's played 5-6 games, and so you don't have a leader on the floor. I mean, Bam Adebayo is growing into that role, but he's not there yet. So this is a team without an identity. Just to answer the question frankly, they don't know what they want to do from night to night because they don't know who's going to be playing from night to night, and so that in and of itself leaves a lot to be desired.
Yeah, it's like they're in this spot where they need to find out how they can get to playing the type of basketball that we saw in the bubble and that Erik Spoelstra repeatedly wanted to get to when he sized down the lineup with Jay Crowder. They want to get to that type of shooting, that type of switchable defense. but they also have this huge issue where they're the worst rebounding team in the league. They're not protecting the rim. They basically are lacking. I don't know that it's size; it's a particular skill set, and it'll be interesting to see how they balance that because they're living and dying by the three, but they're also not defending and rebounding, and like you can't not do any of those things and expect to turn this around.
I mean, I think a big part of their identity is what Jimmy brought last night, right? Like that is, in terms of relentlessness on both ends, being able to come back from deficits, okay, because they had a deficit early in that game. We saw that all last season, like particularly in the bubble. Like they would run it, they would have a deficit, but you're like, okay, at some point, Jimmy's going to get this thing under control, get to the line. I think that's a huge part of their identity. Get to the line, allow everybody to reset, get back on defense. This is not a team that even last year played well defensively in transition. They have to get set, okay, because it just didn't work out very well. And the way that they get set a lot of time, again, is slowing the game down, stopping the clock. Jimmy gets the line, makes his 2 free throws. Bam has become a good free throw shooter. So you got 2 guys shooting in the 80s from the line. When Hero gets the line, when Dragic goes to the line, you've got 4+ free throw shooters. That's a big part of this thing. They haven't had those 4 guys on the court at all this season together. And now they may be, just as they're getting Dragic back, potentially, they may be without Hero. And so it makes it really challenging to get to it. All right. When we come back, there's some things that we want to get to as far as identity when it comes to, can they actually get to it with what's on the roster? If they get everybody healthy and out of the protocols, or do they need to go outside the roster to do it? Before we do, I want to tell you about another great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. That's our friend Erik Brown. What should every business professional learn from the Miami Heat culture? Again, when it's operating at full throttle, that discipline, preparation, full-time maximum effort, and persevering no matter how difficult the task. Dealing with that now are the pillars of success. When you hire Erik Brown, the official realtor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, you've engaged a professional who admires and embraces those principles. With several years of experience representing clients that include celebrities and executives and pro athletes, but also first-time home buyers. He's uniquely qualified with a business school education and a mindset like that defining Heat culture, and he will provide an unmatched level of service. So if you're considering selling or buying a home in South Florida or just want to know what your property's worth, contact Erik Brown at 305-967-9089. That's 305-967-9089, or go to 5reasonsrealtor.com. Erik also appears here on a regular basis doing the Value Plays segment. Don't you want to actually, if you're going to be dealing with somebody for a period of time, selling, buying a home, don't you want to deal with somebody who can actually talk Miami Heat basketball with you? He's the guy. Erik Brown at 5reasonsrealtor.com, the official realtor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. All right, let's get to it. And Greg, let me ask you this question, because we've talked a lot about what they need. I think there's an agreement, not just among us, but also inside the organization, that if there's a positional need right now, it's a 4. What they wanted to do in the offseason at the 4 didn't work. Jay Crowder was not someone they were able to retain because giving him the 1-year balloon payment wasn't something that he found attractive. There's another player. I know Adam hinted at it last night on the stream. I'll let him tell you, but there's another player they thought they had a deal with who ultimately ended up signing somewhere else. Again, I'll wait for Adam to tell you, but that player might have solved the problem at the 4. But otherwise, Harkless clearly didn't solve it. Achua, they're not ready for him to take that kind of role. I think maybe he should get more of it, but he hasn't. Akpala plays 7 minutes and he's yanked. Myers Leonard, they pay $9 million to. Now he's got an injury. He's basically played in 2 games. And Kelly Olynyk, it's like feast or famine. It's like 1 good game and 3 bad games. So I will ask you this. Can they get to their identity, which they want it to be, which is obviously playing tough defense, getting to the line, and then obviously spraying the floor with shooters? Can they get to that identity with what they have on the roster if it's healthy?
I don't know, because I feel like a lot of that really is contingent upon the right player being next to Bam up front. And I think it's important to make the distinction that it doesn't have to necessarily be a 4. I think Bam can actually be a 4 if you have the right 5 that does the things that are necessary from a defensive perspective, being able to switch, but also protect the rim. I mean, it's a very unique skill set if it ends up being a 5 that can also stretch the floor. So it's more apt to be a 4, but essentially you're looking for that front court player. And I don't see it on the roster. I feel like, in some of the stints with KZ the other night, they actually kind of deployed him on some of the more perimeter players rather than testing him as any, sort of a 4. So I don't know that they're heading in that direction with him. He's at a really short leash. Kelly Olynyk is not that guy. And I just look at the rest of the roster and I just don't see it there. So I think ultimately they're going to arrive at a place where they have a $9 million Myers Leonard that they can pair with another expiring contract, add some sort of asset to it so that they can get a player that further fits the mold. Whether that player is a long-term fit or a short-term fit remains to be seen, but I think it's going to come from outside.
Royal, can they get to it on the roster?
I think that they can get to a semblance of what they want to get to, but it's going to come at a cost. I believe the only way that we can do that is by playing Jimmy at the 4 at this point. Like, I think that Jimmy he's bigger than Jay was in terms of height. So, and he's shown the willingness to be able to guard up. But that is the only way that we're going to get there. Otherwise, I agree with Greg that it's not on the roster. I think that if you start Duncan and Tyler next to Jimmy and Bam, then we've talked about it before on the pod where you have to have a third defensive player. And I think that you start Avery Bradley. That's the only way that I see that this team either form some kind of defensive identity where that they could use their defense to create offense for them. And so that's the only way that I see it happening.
That's a really interesting thought. We haven't talked about that a lot, Greg.
It's very true.
I say we say that Jimmy's big enough, and he just lost 14 pounds. So, but although even with that last night, like he mixed it up, like he was aggressive.
No, it's his mentality. He plays like a 4, even though no matter his size.
and it's also interesting that you mentioned Avery Bradley, because I think the one other guy I didn't talk about that they've kind of used as a 4 is Iguodala. It's a similar concept to Bradley, right? Like the idea is to get another defender. What Alex talks about on the pod all the time is you can have 2, subpar defenders on the floor, but you can't have 3. And the Heat get in trouble when they have 3. And so the idea is Bam, Jimmy, okay, and that, Hero and Robinson, and then that 5th guy can't be a Dragic, it can't be an Olynyk, even though I know but it has to be an Iguodala, or as you're talking, or an Okpala if he was ready. But the thing is, KZ has the physical skills to do it, but he's not there mentally yet. And so, if he's not going to be trusted, if he's going to be playing looking over his shoulder all the time, it doesn't work. I think Precious can get there, but it doesn't seem like Spoelstra wants to do it. So it really does leave you with just 2 options, which is what you're talking about, Royal, which is sizing down completely and going with Avery Bradley, which is going to make you smaller and may exacerbate some of the rebounding issues, although you might make an argument that Avery Bradley will rebound as well as Kelly Olynyk. Okay?
Or you think about it, where Jimmy and Tyler are our second and third best rebounders anyway, and they're still in the game.
Very true.
No, that's true. And now again, we have to think about the idea if Hero's going to be out for 2 weeks, then what do you do? Like if that's what ends up happening, then Avery Bradley starts, right? Most likely for Hero, because I think you leave Goran on the bench.
A lot of Max Strus.
Oh, we'll talk about that.
God, no.
We'll talk. And I don't want to take it out on
you.
Max Strus, but look, everybody knows that I'm a Spose stan, right? Okay. I don't understand what the hell that was last night. I just don't. There were some Heat fans justifying by saying you're getting a little bit more size there, but I don't get. I mean, Sacramento. It was like, as Shaq would say, barbecue chicken. They just kept isolating.
De'Aaron Fox,
the fastest player in the league. Like,
he just let him cook Strus all the fourth quarter. Like, he just cooked him.
But he looked okay with Jimmy on offense. I felt like those 2 guys actually played well off of each other.
Offensively, it's fine. It's fine. But there was one thing they had to do to win that game in the fourth quarter, and it was control De'Aaron Fox. And it wasn't even switches. It was like, okay, you're guarding De'Aaron Fox. Like,
It's like they punted on that one. Let's just punt the matchup.
Right, exactly. Like that's the one guy you can't punt with on that team, and that's what they did. I mean, credit to Max Strus for competing. He does compete. There's no question. I actually thought Vincent might have made more sense there. They didn't have Nunn. They wouldn't have used him defensively on Fox anyway, but I thought at least Gabe was fighting through some screens. But yeah, I mean, the Strus thing, I don't get it. But all right, but let's explore this point a little bit more, because if you're talking about getting to an identity, Avery Bradley is a Miami Heat identity player. We just haven't seen enough of him because, he's been in and out. But I do feel like that would fix some of the issues. Like, you would never have a perimeter player on. Like, if Avery Bradley was playing last night, he would have been on De'Aaron Fox at the end of the game.
100%.
Right? So I'm okay. I mean, if you're a bad rebounding team anyway, then provided again Hero's back, then and he's a good rebounder for guard for sure, then it does make some sense to just put Jimmy at the 4, and then Bradley is not a plus shooter, but he's at least a baseline shooter, and then you have Hero and Robinson. It seems like the best blend. But let me ask you this, Royal, why Bradley over Iguodala?
Because I believe that the point of attack defense is where we need the most help. Top of the zone, just stopping quick ball handlers from getting into the paint at will. And I believe he's more suited to do that. He's younger. We're not trying to use up Andre Iguodala. And I also believe that Avery Bradley, he kind of takes a little bit of the responsibility off of everybody in terms of playmaking as well, not just his defense. He, like you said, he's not a plus shooter. He's a baseline shooter. He's not a plus playmaker. He's a baseline playmaker. And so it's like at times, when we don't want Bam to initiate offense, or we don't want Jimmy, or we don't want Tyler, then you add Avery Bradley in there, and that solves that problem just a little. And I think just incrementally, like, he just fits better with that starting unit than an Andre Iguodala would.
Greg, is it also Avery Bradley's a little younger than Iguodala too? One of your concerns, I know we've talked about, is wearing out Andre. If Andre's a player you're planning on keeping this year, if he's not a player that you're flipping because of his contract, then he's somebody that you're going to want, provided that you get to the playoffs, right? So I guess it's better to use up Avery Bradley than it is to use up Andre Iguodala, because you feel like Avery Bradley is going to be able to handle. Plus, Avery Bradley didn't play in the bubble last year either, so he basically got 2 to 3 months off.
No,
fresh legs.
You want more from Avery Bradley. There's no doubt, because the specific thing that they need from Avery Bradley is something that, Iguodala can maybe do in spurts, but not consistently the way that Avery Bradley brings that specialized skill of staying in front of quicker guards to the table. But when you talk about like who's going to start around these guys, I think another big piece of this, and unfortunately, there's not really much other to say about it other than it's make or miss, is that the Heat's identity, they got to get to a better 3-point shooting team. I mean, to be 15th in the league in 3-point shots made and 24th in 3-point percentage, like, this is another thing that ties into how they make the starting lineup work, how they make the pieces that fit around Tyler, Duncan, Bam, and Jimmy, who that fifth player is. They really have to take into account how it maximizes how they also turn around this offensive thing.
Yeah, but to your point, though, I know part of the identity of the team last year was to be a shooting team, but this team is shooting 35% from the field. So is that really a part of our identity at this point? Like, are we a good shooting team? Because in some cases,
Royal, it has to be, right? That's the thing. Like, I mean,
you're right.
No, but this team's not going anywhere unless they're shooting 36% plus from 3 on a high volume. Like that, they're not a post-up team. Okay, they're not going to do that. They're not. I hate to say it, they're not going to be a hold you down defensive team. They weren't last year. Like, no, right? I mean, before this,
we thought they were going to be, and then like that identity never formed. They were actually the offensive juggernaut.
But Greg, how does it form? Again, no disrespect, but how does it form when 4 of your core rotation players are Hero, Robinson, Dragic, and Olynyk? Like, it's not.
And you got to bet on the other side of this,
right?
3-point shooting.
You have to be really good offensively. Like, of those guys, like, Goran is not going to become a better defender. He competes, but he's not going to become a better defender. Hero has somewhat. Robinson has somewhat. But I mean, to say if they both get to average, you're comfortable with that. Like, that's where you. And Kelly, I mean, we've seen enough of Kelly to know he's going to take some charges, but he's not going to rebound. And he's just not somebody you can leave out there for long stretches against physical players. So none of that's going to change. So you look at the other side of it, you're like, okay, Bam, yes. Jimmy, yes. Avery Bradley, yes. Iguodala, yes, although not for long stretches anymore. And you don't have Crowder, and you were hoping to replace Crowder in some way with Harkless, who's not really playable or he looked playable in one game before he went out. And then, Strus, no. Vincent, I mean, have we seen enough? He competes. I will say that he competes. Like he fights over screens. Like he does more than Nunn.
Yeah, I mean, he does. But I think to the point that's been made ad nauseum on this podcast, we have too many one-way players that can play either side of the ball, but cannot play both.
You sound like Alex. Yeah,
I but it comes down to not so the personnel anymore. If we know the players, it comes down to the rotation and how does Spo deploy these. It's the thing that Alex keeps talking about, which is you cannot have more than 2 negative defenders on the court, but then your offense suffers. And then if you flip that, then the same thing happens on its inverse. So it's just a matter of finding that right mix.
I do think that the one thing we saw last night is that Jimmy can solve the playmaking issue.
Yes.
He that's like the one thing we've talked about that we were a little concerned about, like that can be solved. Like between Jimmy, Bam, and you get Goran back, and then you add Hero. Between those four, there's enough. Look, their assist percentage is still top 10 in the league. Like they've been fine. The turnovers are high, but they do for a team without a quote unquote true point guard. They're okay there, which is why I've come around to the idea that as much as I like the Kyle Lowry idea, the bigger need, and I think this is what they believe too, and I know this is the bigger need is up front. The bigger need is up front. Like they feel like they have enough playmaking and potentially could have enough shooting. They know they don't have a player to play next to Bam. They know it. And whatever they did this offseason, which were all sort of these we've talked about Myers enough. Okay. Olynyk, they weren't trading at this point. Achua has been a pleasant surprise. Okay. But they weren't counting on him to play big minutes this year, particularly no tournament, no summer league, all that things. He's been way above expectations. KZ maybe a little bit below because KZ is not a plug and play player like Precious is. Like Precious, you just send him out there and just run hard. Okay. Yeah. And he does it. But I think the playmaking issue is somewhat solved, but the rebounding issue is not solved. The sort of, allowing Bam to float a little bit. They don't have somebody up front to do that. And so when Bam was not aggressive last night, which is something else I want to get to. And when he's not, it shows because they don't have anybody in the front court to kind of take that burden off of him, and they won't play him and Precious together. All right. When we come back, I know this sounds really negative after they just won and they at least broke the losing streak, but we're going to get into what the solutions are outside the roster, because it sounds like all three of us are kind of saying that solution may not actually exist. All right. But before we do, I want to tell you about another great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. You've got to go to manscaped.com, use the code 5RSN. That's 5RSN. You get 20% off anything, but I want to tell you first about what they've got going on here with their new cologne. You definitely need to check that out. This is their new refined cologne signature scent by Manscaped. So complete your grooming game. If you've already gotten everything else, the perfect package 3.0, you got to check out the cologne. I'm going to try to read this with a straight face. Calming and inviting, the signature scent introduces a light citrus burst before settling into the anchoring notes of vetiver and a woodsy masculine finish. Say that 3 times fast. This 50 milliliter spray cologne is even hypoallergenic, cruelty-free, dye-free, paraben-free, and 100% vegan. Also, the beautifully designed glass bottle makes a statement, and the manly scent is attractive to set the mood. Get 20% off and free shipping. That's right. It's time to feel sexy, Royal and Greg, with the code 5RSN at manscaped.com. Now back to the pod. All right. So if we agree that it's not on this roster, where is it? Like, I mean, they're going to have to go outside. It's a little problematic when you say you've got to get to your identity, but to get to your identity, you got to bring in somebody who's not with the Heat right now. So Greg, where do they get it?
Well, let's first clarify that they can get to their identity without necessarily going outside, but it's just not going to be a final form that can get them back to the NBA finals. I think that as long as they start hitting shots and they're relatively healthy, even this group can be a contender in the Eastern Conference. But if you're talking about really taking a leap, they're going to have to ask the question, Are we going to go for a Band-Aid option that expires this summer so that we're essentially swapping expiring contracts on the roster now, like Myers Leonard, for instance, for a player that they would expire this summer as well, but would be much more serviceable for them? Or do they look at the landscape of 2021 and free agency and say, you know what, if we can go get a guy that will really fit this roster, let's go all in on a player like, let's say, John Collins. Do you envision him as a fit next to Bam long-term in the front court, and you're willing to offer him a max extension? Like, is that a viable option? I think that those are the questions, and maybe not necessarily the exact players that they're going to have to look at, but that's what they're going to have to ask themselves, independent of the question of, do you just take all your chips, throw them on the table towards Bradley Beal, and then you may be abandoning the conversation related to what's next to Bam because the entire roster has to be reshuffled. So there's like a lot of balls in the air when it comes to this.
But see, Royal, if they're doing, look, the Bradley Beal thing, I mean, everybody knows how I feel about Bradley Beal, and that if you can go get Bradley Beal, you go get Bradley Beal. But if you're doing that, you're essentially going all in on the shooting and scoring thing. Like, because Bradley Beal's not a bad defender when he's motivated to defend. He's been in a bad defensive system with a team that doesn't defend at all. And so I do think he'd become a better defender in Miami, but he's not solving their defensive issues. I mean, they're going to try to score 125 points, right? Like that's the whole. So does that even, like, we focus so much on the two guards. It was Harden, it's Beal, it's Oladipo, when it does seem like a guy like John Collins actually fits what they need more and would cost them less.
Yeah, I think John Collins would be an amazing fit next to Bam because of all the things that he can do. And he's shown a willingness to play defense. But another name that I want to kind of like throw out there is somebody that we just saw, Marvin Bagley III. He's long. He's the type of power forward that can put the ball on the floor. He didn't rebound well against Miami, but I mean, he can rebound. He can shoot a little bit. And I think the reason that so many people are looking towards these offensive-minded forwards is because that's the way that the game is moving. And I believe that if you have somebody like that next to Bam, then your offense could be a semblance of your best defense. If you're trying to give up very little, then you're still going to have a roster full of one-way players. You're still going to have the Tylers and the Duncans on the roster. And so if your goal is going to be to outscore people, then you get somebody like Marvin Bagley, who is a lottery pick, an elite-level talent, and see if he can develop in a contract.
But Royal, don't you need, like, I'm good with the Heat, with the reclamation projects, particularly the young reclamation projects. They've had success with those throughout the years, but typically it's in a year where you've got a full training camp. You have time to assimilate with the other players. Like, I don't know, like, this is a speeding train, right? Like, it's running over people. So, like, picking up Marvin Bagley now, it feels like more of a move for next season, and I'm fine with it. Like, I feel like, look, these players go to Sacramento. I've done this many times. If you literally draft the player that was picked at one pick after Sacramento picked for like the last 10 years, you would have not like a good team. You would have an all-time team. Like they could have had Luka. Okay. Right. I mean,
what a mess.
But I mean, you can literally do that for the last 15 years, but I don't really know whether it's because they're not good players that they draft or because the program is such a mess that those players never have it. Is it a little bit of both? Like, if Luka went to Sacramento, let's say Trae Young went to Sacramento, how does that look?
I mean, I don't think that works. I don't think that works. Trae Young in Sacramento, I don't think that works at all. I mean, he can't defend. They would put nobody around him who could defend, and so the roster would be totally unfit for.
But Roy, how would Luka? I mean, Luka doesn't defend either, but how would Luka look in Sacramento?
I think Luka's one of those transcendent talents that would have looked like Luka anywhere he went. Like, that's just the way that I believe. That's how I feel about Luka.
But you look at a guy, okay, again, this is a conversation we've had before, but like, if you look at RJ Barrett, right? If they don't hire Tibbs this year, RJ Barrett's career to me flatlines. Like, but with Tibbs, all of a sudden RJ Barrett's looking like a player. Like, that does matter. I mean, Tyler Hero gets drafted by the Kings, right? Tyler Hero is not even Buddy Hield, okay? At first. So that's the thing with those players there. Like, I do feel like it does make sense to take a chance on players that are in bad organizations, particularly young players. Like John Collins, like the Atlanta situation, like the Hawks have not been a great organization, but I feel like Lloyd Pierce is a pretty good coach and he's established some kind of a culture there. So like, I feel like John Collins has had a chance, whereas Bagley hasn't. So I get what you're saying, Royal. Like, I think that he could certainly be somebody that he could work with. and he's got extremely high upside. Although they said no more Duke guys, right? But he's got extremely. But I just don't know if it would help them this year. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, so if you're talking about a player that helps immediately, then you're looking towards somebody like a Lamarcus Aldridge, who you guys brought up on the stream, an established player who Pat's been connected to before, the player that he's liked, and like you guys always say, he always comes back around the players that he likes, and he has an established skill set that we know could work next to Bam. He can shoot, he can play the five, and I think that he would fit in. He'd slide in very well on this team.
You know what? I wouldn't be surprised if they would try to see what it would cost to get DeMar DeRozan and Lamarcus Aldridge in the same move. Absolutely.
Yeah. So what would that cost? Because the DeRozan thing is getting more interesting to me. I didn't like it at first. We talked about it before the season because there is so much duplication with Jimmy because DeMar has not been a great playoff player, but also there are ties to the organization. First thing, Dwayne loves him, okay, which has always been kind of a factor in it. But he's become a better passer. He's become a better range shooter this year, and he's defended better. If you look at some of the metrics, like I understand there's duplication with Jimmy, but if you're going all in on a guy who he gets to the, I mean, you talk about getting to the line. If you had him, Bam, and Jimmy out there at the same time with two spacers, they would live at the line, okay? But what would that take, Greg? Like to get both, because it's a lot of money you have to send out.
It's $51.7 million. That's what you got to get to from a salary perspective. So that's, just in itself, regardless if you're even wanting to approach what does it take from a value compensation perspective, just trading that much money is unheard of, generally speaking, in the NBA. But you would think it would take a mix of all the expiring contracts Miami has, and then probably something in the neighborhood of like, I would guess KZ Okpala and Precious Achua, something like that. Maybe Kendrick Nunn as well. And then you're kind of, you're shortchanging your bench and a couple young pieces, but you are plugging and playing with some vets, and it would be a short-term thing because they would expire in the offseason.
Could you hold on to Hero and/or Robinson?
You would have to. I don't even think you explore that deal for Hero or Robinson. I think like Robinson is the kind of player that I would begin to think about if we're going to max extend John Collins, if you think that that's the long-term fit there. I'm not thinking about Robinson for any short-term fixes.
What's interesting,
I don't think I would think about Tyler for Collins either. I think that's off limits.
No
Tyler
way.
is for the star. Like,
it would be Robinson again if you're assuming that you're not going to sign Robinson to $18 to $20 million. Like that's because that's where it's going to be. What's funny about it is that with the Spurs and Robinson is the Spurs basically just gave Davis Bertans away.
Yeah.
And so to go get Robinson, I'm not sure. And I don't even know what Pop's future is there. It feels like Pop just wants to, it feels like they've overachieved this season. And so maybe there'll be talk that Pop sticks around longer, but I feel like he wants to turn it over to Becky Hammond. Like, I feel like and I'm not saying she's not deserving because she is, but I feel like the social statement that he would be making there is more important to him than even competing for another championship himself. Like to be the coach who basically sets that in motion where you have a female head coach and he leaves her with a good program. Like that feels like with everything Pop's done sort of outside of basketball the past 3-4 years, it feels like that's where he wants that to go. And maybe sort of resetting the cupboard with a bunch of really good young players, because they have some good young players there now, like, and resetting it and adding a couple more pieces to it and say, here's your team that you can build with. He might be interested in that. I'll say this. If you could have one or the other, Greg, it's Aldridge though, right?
Yeah, just because of the fit. And he doesn't solve all the rebounding stuff, but you just figure that they would figure some of that stuff out from the front court perspective. So yeah, that would be my fit for 1 year. But the DeRozan thing, I think that there's ways he and Jimmy would play a lot better than people think from the way that they would complement each other. But yeah, I got to go LMA.
Well, Jimmy likes him too, personally. Like that matters.
And I would think
like,
that DeRozan would be. I think DeRozan would be probably coming off the bench though, right? Like I don't think that you slot him in as a starter unless you traded Duncan or Tyler. Like if you were somehow able to keep both of them,
or Jimmy at the 4, like you suggested.
Well, if Jimmy's at the 4, you could play DeRozan, Hero, and Robinson, and I mean, you're going to outscore a hell of a lot of teams. I mean,
yeah, but it's like I'm thinking about pairing Goran with DeRozan off the bench, and just to kind of make sure that you keep some level of balance between your starters and your bench. I don't think you want to put all of your defensive prowess on the starters and then just have guard. Like you can have DeRozan guard up with that second unit, and maybe he's the 4 next to Precious or something like that. If that's how it looks.
I mean, I look at DeMar as an average defender at this point. Like I don't think he's a bad defender at this stage. Like but you're, if you put Goran and DeMar together, that might be the best backup backcourt in NBA history. Actually, like if you just look at what the two of them could, I mean, you wouldn't need anybody else in that second unit. I mean, essentially, you just need one big to rotate in there. But like we said, you may not have Precious, so you're going to be short other bigs. But if you have Lamarcus, then that's a whole nother conversation because Lamarcus is starting with Bam then. So we'll get to more of that another day. Follow Royal at Royal A. Shepherd. Obviously, check out the post-game streams. I think you're taking over back from me again tomorrow night because, Greg, I'm going to be at the game. So Greg and I will likely do the pod together. Follow Greg at Greg Sylvander. Check out prizepicks.com. Use the code 5. Manscaped.com. Use the code 5RSN. That's the number 5RSN for 20% off. And check out 5reasonsrealtor.com for our guy, Eric Brown.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network.